Good evening, and welcome to another freedom-fighting version of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. Now here's your frivolous and freewheeling host, Voice of Doom. Good evening. I'm back after a short hiatus of about 16 hours with another exciting episode. So, let's see. I will add on a little bit about what I said on my last diatribe. First, having horrible days. Well, I analyzed it, and I realized there are bad days, there are unfortunate things, there are devastating things that happen to a person in their lifetime, and then there are inconveniences, and I am not going to mix up the two. I'm going to count my blessings: 2 reasonably healthy children, a home to live in, food in the refrigerator, and many of the amenities that I've come to enjoy, which make life comfortable. And I'm not going to commiserate over a flat tire or over an injured cat. I'm realizing that I should be grateful for my life and not push fate into giving me some real problems by complaining and whining about small things that get in my way. So that's a little life lesson that I learned. I'll pass on to people. It's very obvious. And a few codas and addendi to my China screed, because I always leave stuff out. So besides the BRI Belt Road Initiative, in which China is encroaching and trying to put controls on the entire Eastern Hemisphere, they've also encroached in our sovereign, what used to be the United States. They've bought up 350,000 acres of farmland. What they're doing with it, I don't know. Whether it's next to sensitive military installations is perhaps true. What they're going to do about that, I don't know. They've also apprehended, from what I understand, around 1,800 Chinese nationals at what used to be the border in the past few months. Now, to be consistent, I believe that all these Chinese nationals should be granted asylum for obvious reasons. They are fleeing an oppressive regime and should be treated like every other Venezuelan and Honduran that are fleeing oppressive regimes. It's more obvious with the People's Republic. So I think all those Chinese illegal migrants should be allowed to stay in the used to be S. So let's play fair. Let's not, be biased. Just because they may not be people of color, they do have different shaped eyes. So let's not play favorites. So we'll leave China there. I said I'd move on to another conflict, and I did a little bit of research, and I didn't write it down. But I wonder how many people in the used to be S are familiar with the name Stepan Bandera. Sounds like somebody from Venezuela, but he's not. He was actually born in Austria-Hungary back in 1909. And he was assassinated in 1959. Now, he is the kind of a person, a world personage, who was destined to be assassinated, and I'll tell you why. Now, countries have their national heroes, and many countries who have had precarious positions as pawns of greater powers have had their national heroes. There was a person in Turkey who was a horrible, horrible despot who participated in genocide of Armenians, and he was assassinated by a Turkish person who is a national hero and has a statue in some place like Minneapolis or someplace like that. There are national heroes in the used to be United States, such as perhaps used to be George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. Now it's no longer politically correct to call them heroes because they were slave owners and white supremacists. But we also have national heroes that tend to be gladiators and jesters. They are entertainers, they are sports figures. Those are the people that are mostly closely related to being national heroes in this day and age. Now, Stepan Bandera was a national and is a national hero to the freedom-loving people of Ukraine. And if you ask the new Winston Churchill, the new George Washington, Volodymyr Zelensky, he will say, yes, some people regard Stepan Bandera as a national hero. Some people. Just like Petri Dish will say some goppers want to end Social Security. Just take it away. So, whether Zelensky considers Bandera a hero is subject to debate. But let me tell you about Stepan. He was a freedom fighter. He was a nationalist. He was a Ukrainian nationalist. And this happened during the World War II years that he wanted freedom from the Soviet Union, which is a noble cause, okay. Now there's a certain adage that goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Who is the enemy of the Soviet Union in the 40s? Schicklgruber and his gang of merry men, the Nazis. Bandera allied himself with those self-same Nazis. Bandera was a ultra-nationalist. Bandera was a anti-Semite. Bandera was a fascist. Bandera was a believer in selective breeding, or you might say, what did Margaret Sanger call it? Eugenics. He was a Nazi. He is a national hero of the Ukraine. He is one of those reasons that Putin gave himself, Mad Vlad, to attack and try to annex certain parts of Ukraine, because he said they are Nazis. There's a very strong Nazi influence in Ukraine. And the fact of the matter is that there is. So, if we put the shoe on the other foot, and there were Nazi regimes or people, there was a strong Nazi influence in, say, Mexicali. I think the U used to be S. You would do something about it, would consider that a threat. Now, let's not quibble and argue about whether the Ukrainians are Nazis or not. Zelensky, and you won't find this in Wikipedia or any of the mainstream front pages of Google, because the mode of thought for the U.S. is to support Ukraine at all costs, and I mean all costs. Even if it costs hundreds of billions of dollars, we will support Ukraine. We will wear Ukrainian flags. We will invite Zelensky to visit Petri Dish, and we will invite Zelensky to have a joint session of Congress and speak before that Congress, because he is a national hero for what used to be America. He is a freedom fighter. He's going against all odds. He's everything that we wish we were. Now, what else is Zelensky? Well, maybe he doesn't realize this, but his troops are being pushed to the point where they have to use other means of defense to maintain their national sovereignty. These means of defense include execution of Russian troops in cold blood. These actions include using chemical warfare, namely hydrogen cyanide. It's canisters of an aerosol which contain cyanide. They are using them. Ukraine is using chemical warfare against the Russians. We are allied with Ukraine. We are condoning, turning a blind eye to these atrocities because the Ukraine is a proxy for the Western way of life. So we support them. We will not say anything about chemical warfare. We will not say anything about summary executions of captured Russian prisoners. But it does give impetus to Vlad the Mad to escalate, and he is going to escalate. This war is almost a year old. It was February 24th, 2022, when this conflict started. And it started because Petri dish said that if there's a minor incursion by the Russians, that won't be so bad. So they minorly excursed. So, in conclusion, this thing's going to get worse. Now, what's going to happen from the knowledge of people that seem to know what's going on is that come springtime, which is right around the corner, Vlad's going to bulldoze through Ukraine. There's not going to be any more of these bombings and missilings of Kyiv and other cities to try to soften the target. They are now going to plow through and take everything lock, stock, and barrel. So if you want a little bit of more background, you may refer back to my other diatribes. One is called Crimea River, which gives a little bit of background and things that are happening in Crimea, which is an autonomous zone that belongs to Ukraine, so their position is kind of precarious. They are now occupied by Russia, and they want it to be, and now I don't know if they want it to be. So go back to Crimea River. And I also did one called Ukraine, Y-U-C-K, Crane. And that gives you a little bit of background on the history of Ukraine going back to about the year 1. Get a little deep dive, learn a little about how the Ukraine has been a pawn and a volleyball and a ping pong ball for various powers here, there, and everywhere. But it is good for people to realize that Stepan Bandera, who coincidentally was assassinated with cyanide poisoning in 1959, the year I was born, was a Nazi and continued to be. Now, the Soviet Union wanted him back. Well, they didn't want him back, they wanted him. He was considered a traitor for, wanting Ukrainian independence as a freedom fighter. The U.S. had a program in post-war world called Anyface, and that was a way to keep certain neo-Nazis in the Western fold because of their value as freedom fighters. So you see how confusing it all gets. And I think we ought to think twice before we send one more bullet or one more flak jacket to Ukraine. I didn't like it when it started. I don't like it now. I don't like seeing people in the halls of the U.S., used to be Congress, wearing Ukrainian flags and cheering for a guy who's an oppressor. Zelensky is not the nice comedian that he makes himself out to be. He jails his opposition, and he jails media outlets that are against his policies. And there's always a mess in Ukraine. It's a corrupt country. It's always been messed up. So for us to fight a proxy war against the Soviet used to be Union is a fool's errand, and it will get us all killed eventually. Probably through cyanide poisoning, hydrogen cyanide being dropped by balloons. And I don't want to talk more about balloons because I think Happiness is listening to me. He's sending balloons over left and right. And I gotta admit, I would have to think that the hot air balloon tourist industry, touring companies are suffering badly now because there's a very good chance they'll be shot down. Because they're being shot down willy-nilly. So I'll leave that there. It wasn't quite as good as I was hoping it would be, but it's late and I'm just a little befogged. But I think you learned a little. Look up this guy, Stepan, Stepan, Bandera. Look him up and see what you come up with. It's a little bit of, off-the-wall stuff that people don't realize. So I'll leave it there, and we'll talk more about the worldwide conflagration and the utter worldwide genocide that is soon to befall us over the next month or two. All right then, bye.